Can you get top 100 without uber uniques, with just being good and not having farmed 1000 plus durials? That was the main question I asked myself, and that was the mission this Bone Spear build did have. Now there's something interesting people don't tell you, but did you know that the damage of shrines, blast wave, artillery is actually scaling with all of your fancy pansy multipliers? So if you're optimizing your Paragon board very much and your skills to multiply the multiply, then you'll get so much more out of the shrines. And this is also why uber uniques are quite broken. The Ring of Starless Skies gives you 40x more damage. That 40x more damage 40x's your blast wave and your artillery too. And the same goes for the Genesis glyph that I don't have. Gives you another 30% damage multiplicative. So with these two items, 70% multiplier that you are going to missing out on. So if you wonder why you can't get 800,000 scores in Necromancer, that is your answer. Still though, can you actually get into the top 100 without these uber uniques? Now I've been taking a new attempt to Bone Spear to maximize my damage. And there's two components to that. First is Army of the Dead instead of Bone Storm, because Bone Storm might give you more crit, but you actually kill the one boss to get a 100% crit chance. And Army of the Dead is actual good damage. But on top, there's another item, and it's called the Godslayer Crown. So the Godslayer Crown gives you a 60% damage multiplier. And that one happens when you damage a boss or stun other enemies. So this one is also amplifying the damage of your shrines. Imagine having the blast wave hitting a boss, 60% damage multiplier on your blast wave, and then boom, suddenly you're actually one hitting the boss with a blast wave and not 2 or 3 hitting. If you pair this with T-Bolt's Will is that 40% damage multiplier, and when you're dashing, 40%, 60%, 100%, amongst all the other multipliers you're having. And this is how you can make good work even without having those crazy uber uniques. Because the Godslayer Crown, when I found 10 in the last 20 vaults, and I wish I was exaggerating, but they just kept pooling in. Let me walk you through gear, skills, and the absolute altered Paragon board. I've been going some complete new routes there, and it's so much fun. First, we max out Bone Spear with a Paranormal Bone Spear, and then Hood Flash for the maximum amount of corpses. We're playing Blood Mist into Ghastly Blood Mist, and yes, this is very important to become unstoppable. All the points into Corpse Explosions for the Plague Corpse Explosion super damage. Then only 1 point into Grim Harvest. That is more than enough, you don't need more, and 3 points into Fueled by Death. We're currently still playing Amplified Damage with a Curse because that is another 12% multiplier that also goes over to your Shrine. Might consider actually changing this. You don't need the cooldown reduction from the Curse. Here you could be using the Heart to Crapify to kill things a little bit faster. It gives you maybe another 5 to 10 seconds edge. And then the Death Approach for the movement speed. No point into Death Embrace because the damage reduction of the multiplier is not really worth it. Then 0 points into Corpse Tendrils. You get enough from the items we're having. We don't need the slow and we don't need the vulnerable from this because our bot is doing vulnerable, our spear is doing vulnerable, and our Decrepify is doing the slow that we're actually looking for. 3 points into Serration and 3 compound and 3 evulsion, and we only have 1 point in standalone. The damage reduction is not needed for the dungeon right now, so you don't need the bonus damage reduction. Rather, just 1 point, then you can put 3 points into Inspiring Leader for the bonus attack speed. And here, we're then putting into the Army of the Dead with Prime Army of the Dead to leave behind more corpses. And lastly, Ossified Essence. Now, interesting enough, with the bonus attack speed and the Bone Splinters happening into bonus Bone Splinters, there's a thought to remove Decrepify and use Bone Splinters as that super attack speed thing when you have the Artillery Shrine. Because the Artillery Shrine just wants to be shot as fast as possible. The Bone Spear might do some damage. The Artillery Shrine just goes with the Bone Splinters, and especially as the Bone Splinter is shooting bonus projectiles and there's even more coming out of it, it might be worth a consideration. Now forget about offensive aspects on your neck. We're currently running Ghostwalker for the 30% movement speed as it will become unstoppable. For that we have the Blood Mist and our boots. Would you want Shrine Buff Duration, movement speed after killing an elite, and movement speed? Yes, instead of darkness skill damage, I would like to have ranks and core skills or ranks into amplified damage or death rage. Now, in order to become unstoppable, my boots have metamorphosis with the triple dash and then movement speed, killing elite, movement speed, and shrine buff duration. That's mandatory. Lastly, Vampiric Curse as low as possible. Now my ring is running the Serration that we're getting that 40% damage multiplier, which seems to be working for the shrines as well. Interesting. Definitely looking for critical strike chance here. That's your main thing you want to have as high as possible. Going then for the offense with a critical strike chance, and there's still the Corpse Tenor aspect, even though, yes, that hires your critical strike damage and it hires the shrines damage as well, though, so the critical strike damage the shrines do. But the generals seem to be a little bit tricky to pull off in the dungeon sometimes to have them just in the right moment. Crit chance, lucky chance, resource generation, cooldown reduction, perfection. The Panzer T-bolts, because I dash and I get the 40% multiplier, there's nothing better for Bone Spear right now. It gives you maximum essence on top, which hires your ossified essence in general, your key passive, so perfection. On the gloves, critical strike chance is absolutely needed, together with the Bone Splinter, vulnerable bonus multiplier damage aspect. Lucky hit chance works plenty well too for more corpses, and then attack speed. And here's again attack speed, and then that Bone Splinter instead of amplify, it could be working plenty well. I will have to investigate this. On the chest, we're currently playing Disobedience. I kind of need Disobedience to not die. The chest can have ultimate skill damage and physical damage. You might notice I'm going nowhere for resistances or any kind of damage reduction. Not needed. I have 6.6k armor, 15k life, and my resis are not even maxed. They're kind of like 62, 65%, and yet we're surviving and zooming. Lastly, the helmet is the Godslayer crown, and here we're talking about when you stun, freeze, immobilize an elite enemy, or damage a boss, it pulls nearby enemies in and then gives you the damage multiplier. And that works really well since you can plan your routes that you wouldn't be killing an elite in the next 12 seconds, so that always for the bosses, you're going to be having that 60x multiplier, especially when you're doing the route below. That works so well, giving you cooldown reduction and damage, all damage. The problem is you're kind of missing out on these Bone Spear explosion echoes, yet for that immediate boss kill speed and for your shrines to do more damage, it seems so important, and it works damn well. Book of the Dead is currently critical strike chance, so we have more critical strike chance. Then the Skeletal Mages for the vulnerable multiplier. And lastly, the Golem for the critical strike damage. Now there's a thought for the Book of the Dead that we drop Grasping Veins because it's not always working and it's quite harsh to pull off at times. It gives us a 40% damage multiplier. Alternative, you could hire your sacrifice bonuses by up to 25%, which would give you more crit chance, more damage versus vulnerable, and more critical strike damage, again, from the Golem. And that altogether might just sum up completely better than what the Tendrils could offer, especially if you have enough critical strike damage gear to end up around 50% critical strike chance. And then if you kill the dude at the beginning, you anyways get that high critical strike chance. Plus there's worst case elixir for another 15%. It's worth a thought. Now the Paragon board looks so juicy and different. We're starting down here with the exhumation still to boost our corpse damage. This sadly doesn't boost any other damage in multiplicative, but it's worth it to have your corpse explosions go boom. Now make sure to boost your all damage on this side, and you don't really need the armor, but still do take the intelligence. We're not even going for the resistance to all elements down here. Don't even waste time on these points. Going into the Flesh Eater board, yes, with the bonus attack speed down here, only 6%. Corporal Glyph that you're boosting the damage to elites, significant. And we're taking damage to injured enemies. Yes, if bosses reach 35% HP and you're getting damage to injured enemies with your shrines and with your Bone Spear in general, that's neat bonus damage, in this case needed for speed. Lastly, next, sacrificial in here instead of essence. Yes, sacrificial, that you're boosting the bone skill damage significantly. That is so good. Going in here and then over this round, saving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 points instead to get the bonus maximum essence and essence on kill. Next up, Send of Death board. We're going for the exploit glyph. And yes, we're taking even more damage to injured enemies. It sounds so weird to take damage to injured enemies, but it simply works with damage to healthy enemies. And then you do take the damage to healthy enemies here as well to have your opening salvo be more deadly. If you run in with your explosion, if you run in with your, blast wave shrine, the damage to healthy enemies yeah, it makes the blast wave even stronger. And then last but not least, into the Bloodbath board, that we can then get the Essence Glyph. And all of that together works so goddamn well to blast our enemies. Now lastly, strategy for my 611,000 points. And I think I can get around 650 with this. I don't think 700,000 is possible without Starless Skies and without the Genesis. Because right now I only have Evernight, and Evernight is nice, but the damage from Evernight does not tune the shrines as well. Because Genesis increasing the effectiveness, then having Flash of Adrenaline do 30% more damage, that works on the shrines and your damage. There's a 30% multiplier you're missing wholesale. Resource support and breaking on Tempest, and also tactical and duration. And right now I have Safeguard for damage reduction, but I don't need damage reduction. I don't need this to stay alive. I stay alive anyways. I'm good enough anyways. And if I had that item, if I even had the Genesis, everything would do 30% more damage. And the Army of the Dead would chunk bosses like crazy. Now 650k, I think possible, but 700k ain't happening. When we got here someone with Grandfather, Ring of Starless Skies, and Harlequin Crest on the Blood Surge. And yes, for the Blood Surge, you kind of need Harlequin Crest and the Grandfather for the Super Burst and the Starless Skies for the Super Burst and resource. You cannot replicate this very well without the Uber Uniques. And especially with the Genesis then, your damage is so high, you blast everything. Still though, with this build and the right strategy, 650k. And the main thing you have to do for maximum damage is pull the 3 bosses together in the beginning. You damage them 1, 2, 3, get the double point shrine, nuke them all with Army of the Dead, Godslayer, Crown, Corpse, Explosion, then kill the hordes that are appearing, stay in one place, kill the hordes, respawn the bosses, and kill them again. With their shrine buff duration and the double point shrine, boom, you're racking up so many points that is not possible anyhow else. You really need to do this in the beginning for the maximum outcome. And then I want to see you in the top 100 as well. Post your scores in the description below. Show me how far you've gotten. Maybe you're even smarter than me and even better than me, and you've gotten even further in the leaderboard without any Uber Uniques and the tuning stones. Tell me. I want to know. Brag away. You deserve it. If you want to see how this build performs in an actual action scenario, here's the video for it. Enjoy.